So the moment that I saw the actual indictment go through, oh shoot, now everybody knows about this.
It was on Daily Mail. I mean, it was
Yeah.
national story.
You can't fake your way out of, crying on the floor last night. I'm willing to guess that I was not, exuding an air of confidence.
From San Diego, it's the Wonderful Dentist Podcast, a show featuring Wonderist dentists, their practices, lives, the problems they face, and who they are as people. In every episode, we dig in and ask the questions you've always wanted to know. So pour yourself a glass, settle in, and let's get comfortable with the uncomfortable.
We are finally sitting in the podcast studio doing something we have wanted to do for a really, really long time, and we're so excited you're here today. Welcome to the Wonderful Dentist Podcast, where we celebrate the incredible stories of dentists and dental professionals in the field who are shaping the future. We're your hosts, Laura Maly and Michael Anderson, co-founders of Wonderist Agency, and we're excited to dive into an inspiring journey with you today. We believe that every dentistry professional has a unique story to tell, from the challenges they've overcome to the changes they've embraced. We're here to explore the personal and professional journeys that have made these dedicated humans and wonderful professionals who they are. So get ready to be inspired, informed, and entertained as we uncover the passion, dedication, and expertise that make our guests truly wonderful. And today, we're going to welcome Wonderist's very first client, Dr. Paco Major, out of Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And if you were wondering, what does a 6'4" Polish guy, a brand new practice, and the FBI have in common? Stay tuned to listen for more. Hello, welcome.
Hey guys, how are you doing today?
Good, how are you?
Doing well. Thanks for having me on here. And I really want to say this is really exciting. We've been together for, it's probably approaching 15 years at this point. And I just want everyone to know how awesome Wonderist is. It's so awesome, I don't even think about marketing. And that's kind of the whole point of what it's supposed to be.
Well, we appreciate that very much. Do you want to spend a couple of minutes kicking things off and letting the audience know a little bit about you? Can you give us 5 things that people need to know about Dr. Paco Major?
Yeah, so I finished dental school in 2010 at Marquette University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, did a GPR, and then started my first practice straight out of my residency. It was under construction while I was still a resident, and along the road, I had built a new practice and made a lot of mistakes, learned a lot along the way, worked really hard, and things have so far worked out pretty well. And it's been really fun getting to know a bunch of people and helping a bunch of people and working with patients and getting to learn more about myself as a man, as a husband, as a practice owner, as a dentist, and all that.
Cool. And tell us a little bit about where you are in the practice landscape right now. So where are you sitting and talking to us from today? How many practices you own?
Yeah, so Milwaukee Dental Partners here is our corporate flagship across the wall from our Fox Point office. We have 4 practices in the northern half of the Milwaukee metro. We have 6 dentists plus me. We all work full-time chairside. The long story short is I had a couple practices in New Mexico, and in 2015 I affiliated with Heartland Dental, spent about 3 or 4 years with them, became one of their clinical mentors, developed their implant curriculum, and when things came to a head in 2018, we realized that our paths would have to diverge. So I bought the first practice in 2019. And since then, we've gone up to 4 practices. We actually had 5 at one point, but because we wanted to be able to deliver better service to our dentists and our practices, we decided to downsize to try to uncomplicate things a little bit. And thank goodness we did.
Cool. And what are 1 or 2 other interesting things about you?
I would say that I have an immigrant grit. So I was born in Poland, and I was 7 when we moved to America. We lived in Western Germany, and I'm getting to realize that I'm old because a lot of people I talk with don't understand that West and East Germany were different entities, but it was still communism times. So we were in Western Germany and then Canada, and moved to America when I was 7. And grew up in a probably different way than I currently live. I was obsessed with baseball as a kid, but I couldn't play Little League baseball. My parents couldn't afford it. And so I think that kind of foundational experiences as a kid and being from the family that I'm from gave me a different perspective on life here to make me really want to work for things.
Cool. And tell us a little bit about your journey into dentistry.
Yeah, so I would say there were a couple main things to it. One is when I was in high school, my folks going through a nasty divorce, and my family really didn't have any money at the time, but my mom was getting toothache after toothache after toothache. She went to, I don't remember the exact number, 22, 23, 24 dentists, something along those lines. They pulled a tooth here, they did a root canal there, they did a filling there, and she went dentist to dentist to dentist, and this is a really kind of just stressful, hard time in life to begin with. She went to the 23rd or 25th dentist, and he gave her a night guard, and that basically took care of all of her issues. She was having myofascial pain, and I thought to myself at one point, hey, I could probably do a little bit better than the service she was receiving. And I think that so often we think in dentistry about the tooth, and we kind of don't really think holistically about the human being. And that's a really cool aspect to me. Additionally, I used to install car stereos when I was in high school. I like working with my hand, and you're going to get this from dentists all the time, that they like tinkering, and that's part of why they became dentists. And I am guilty of that as well. But I think that we have to, sometimes we lose focus of the human in dentistry, and that formative experience with my mom was part of it.
Cool. And so you gave us a little bit of the lay of the land on the practice ownership and where you're at right now. Where are you at? Are you clinically still chairside pretty frequently? Are you working on the business more than in the business? Where are you at today?
I am working in the business and on the business.
Okay.
And you guys probably know about this as well, but I see patients chairside full-time 3 days a week, and then I do a split of mentorship and admin work the other 2 days, and then evenings or weekends or whatever it is.
Okay.
I am extremely blessed to have an amazing admin team to make my life a heck of a lot easier, but I am still I still have my hands in the pot and trying to work on the business as well.
Do you enjoy that? Do you enjoy having the clinical days, or are you trying to get out of that?
You know, I think at heart, I'm a clinical guy. I think I'm pretty good at it. I think my patients would agree that I'm pretty good at it. I enjoy it. And I think that one thing, whenever I talk with young enterprising dentists, they talk about building a dental empire. I think it's really hard also to lose sight of the fact that dentists are pretty highly compensated people, and that's kind of the cherry on top as well.
Cool. I'm curious, I think one of the things about your story that I've always loved is it's almost these 3 chapters, right? You come out of dental school and you're already opening a practice. You then have the vision to scale it and start opening a 3rd location. Then you sell to Heartland. There's kind of the whole Heartland chapter as chapter 2. And then you come back and you kind of rebuild it again. I'd love to kind of almost go through each of those chapters and maybe walk through what was going on. Why did you decide to make that jump? And what were the biggest takeaways?
Yeah, absolutely. I was a young, ambitious guy. I was 27 years old, building this practice, over $1 million in debt, plus student debt, and I had 0 patients. And so I think that the way that I like to describe it is I was at the intersection of, bold and stupid, both at the same time. And I was able to, I had no problems making a lot of mistakes, but I think making mistakes is one thing and not learning from them is another. I like to think I learned from a lot of the mistakes, and, I made clinical mistakes, I made management mistakes, I made business mistakes, patient management mistakes, all these things, but you learn from them. And then over time, I got better and better and did reasonably well. And I had the plans of these young, ambitious guys who want to build empires and wanted to do that. And I think that was a wonderful formative experience. Now, shifting on to the next chapter, I think that I didn't even know what I didn't know. And that was one thing that no matter what good or bad situations have happened, we're going to talk about some of the bad ones later on. Whatever good or bad has happened in my life, I'm thankful for it all because it led me to where I am. And I think that joining Heartland Dental made me, I would say first and foremost, just a better man. I understood, or I learned the concepts of leadership. I became a better, through the training, I became a better husband, a better practitioner, a better leader for the team, a better father, and it really put these concepts at the forefront for me. Listening to guys like Simon Sinek and Patrick Lencioni really made a huge impact on my life that I still carry and talk about and try to live up to the principles of on a daily basis. So I think that there were true benefits to that second chapter of my life, and it made me really understand and appreciate the fraternity of dentistry and being part of something bigger and working together with people as opposed to practicing on an island, which I would never truly want to do in my life again.
And I think at that time you really got into clinical education quite heavily as well.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to say I placed more implants than other Heartland doctors at the time, in my time there. So I was tapped to lead the implant or develop the implant curriculum for the company. I spent a lot of time mentoring in other offices about implants, sure, but really just about teaching young dentists how to show up on time, say thank you to their assistants, how to talk with patients, how to take intraoral photos, how to generally be a young professional. And I noticed that, hey, these people who wanted that leadership, it really helped them take off. They went from being a very scared new grad or young doctor to being a much more confident person. And as you guys know, and this is something you deal with your doctors all the time, you have confidence, you have this quiet confidence to you. Everything starts kind of figuring itself out. Patients somehow start saying yes more. Your team somehow respects you better. All these types of things happen, and that gave me and still gives me immense fulfillment to be able to see this, to make their lives better, and ultimately to serve patients better, which is why we're here at the end of the day.
I love that. And what's so funny to me about this is, like, I think the question started with like, oh, so you're in clinical education. And I think so frequently with our dentists, everything is about the hands, right? It's like, we go to these implant courses, we get a new piece of technology. And I often reflect that the problems that we have in our business at Wonderist, the problems that our dentists have, are fundamentally the same. And I always like to call it blocking and tackling, right? It's having processes. And then, there's one thing to have a process, but then can you get the people to follow the process? And I love how you broke it down. It's this simple, it's smiling when a patient comes in the door. It's, showing up to work on time, or following through with the thing you told your team you were going to do in a team meeting, or actually respecting that having a team stand up every day, a huddle, is worth your time, and you're not kind of like, have the front desk do it and I'll go hide out in the back. It's those fundamental things that I think make our best dentists great. And you would think, oh, of course it's got to be the hand skills, right? And that has always been an amazing thing to me.
So are you trying to tell me, Michael, that actually participating in team meetings has some form of benefit?
This
changes everything for me.
It's a lesson we can relearn all the time, right? That'll be the title of this podcast: participate in team meetings.
Absolutely, yeah. It sounds so stupid and so hokey, but good Lord, is it true? I always talk about how in dentistry we are actually in the social sciences. We're basically in psychology, and we happen to work on teeth. And to your point, I think that in dental schools select and dentistry self-selects for people who, really enjoy tinkering, people who play Legos as a kid, and I'm guilty of that, and I love that, right? And I think that being clinically and technically sound is very, very important. But it doesn't matter how good you are at a procedure if you can't get the patient to say yes in the first place, and if you can't get the team on board to do it along with you.
I think the other thing I found, because the same in marketing, right? Like you need to have that strong technical background. You need to know a thing or two. I think where things shifted for me in my career, I remember getting on those first sales calls or doing my first podcast, and I cared so much. I was nervous. I was trying to figure out what the other person wanted me to do. And there's some point, I don't even remember the day, but it just tipped. And I think what it was is I got too busy. My life got too busy with other things that I didn't really, and this might sound bad, I didn't prepare for this one sales call. I just jumped in and I was expert enough at what I did that I was ready. I just knew I was ready. And the minute I stopped caring is the minute I started to thrive. And that may sound bad because someone's like, wait, you're saying I shouldn't care about the patient? Not at all. I stopped caring what other people thought of me. I just said, I'm going to tell you the truth. I'm going to tell you what I know. And this is to help you. I'm not here to make you happy. I'm here to help you. And I think I've seen so many dentists, they go through that struggle of trying to size someone up. Where are they at financially? Are they going to be offended if I say this? And it's like, no, you just need to tell them what they need to know. And it's funny how when you stop caring so much about how someone sees you, all of a sudden everything just explodes.
I'm glad you're recording this because I think that you should play this for dentists. Just like this alone, if they can understand that fundamental concept, will help everyone's career immensely. You hit the nail on the head there, right? I'm not here to try to push a patient into anything. If we're replacing a tooth, for example, 3 generic options are partial denture, bridge if it's an option, or an implant if it's an option. And I'll talk with patients about, here are the 3 things we can do. The partial is going to be whatever, $500-$700 out of your pocket after insurance, and the implant's going to be $2,500 out of pocket afterwards. Whatever you want to do, I don't hugely care. I'm going to chew my food just fine, but I can tell you, look, you want that partial, you're going to get food get caught underneath it. And I've been doing dentistry. I've seen tens of thousands of patients, been doing it a while. I can probably count on one hand the number of patients who have a partial, have had it for 5 years, are happy with it, and wear it regularly.
Yeah.
It's possible, Michael, that you might be patient number 6 for me that's going to enjoy it, but it's not incredibly likely. If you want something that's going to give you the quality of life and let you chew, smile, and function confidently, then we got to do this other option for you. I don't care what you do, right? Whatever you want to do, I'm happy to do it, but this is what it's like. I'm here to educate you, not push you into anything.
That's it.
I went into sales mode there. I'm sorry. I know probably shouldn't have, but these are fundamentally true things. And if you don't like what I have to say, you want to find another dentist who tells you what you want to hear. You want to find that dentist who says, we can do 12 fillings instead of 8 crowns for you. Okay.
Yep.
That's fine. Like, I might not be the right fit for you, and I'm comfortable with that.
There's so much power in that. And I love that you use the word sales. There's probably a few dentists listening to that heard that and recoiled a little bit, and it's just like this is the tough evolution of dentistry. I think one of the things that we've observed even since we've started doing this is the shift from what I would call the clinical dentist to the entrepreneur dentist. And I understand there's some people who went to dental school that say, that's not what I want. And that oftentimes that means you end up associating somewhere, right? Because I just want to focus on my hands. But so many of the dentists that we work with that are opening their own practice, they are an entrepreneur, they're a business owner, and there's this whole other world of management, of selling, right? That awful S word in dentistry that we cannot say. But for me, it's not selling people something they don't need, it's selling people something they do need. And I think that I love that you went into sales mode there, like that little bit. You sit there as a patient and you say, oh my gosh, like this person is educating me, and there's something powerful about someone saying, I don't care about what you do here. I care about the fact that you have all the information you need. That's what I care about.
Yeah, there's very entrepreneurial dentist, Chris Neibauer. I want to say he sold like 20 offices or something like that in the DC area to Heartland Dental in like 2013 or 14, something like that. Listened to a couple podcasts with him and understand him to be a pretty eccentric guy. But one thing in one of these podcasts that I picked up from him was, and I talk about this with other people all the time, of selling dentistry. And, his definition, and what I have just blatantly stolen from him here is my definition of selling dentistry, is convincing people to do the things that they need to have done, but don't want to have done because it isn't currently causing them any issues. And when we if we can just use that if we can agree that that is the definition of selling dentistry, if I talk with dentists who say they don't want to sell dentistry, I clearly am not the right fit for them, because I will advocate for people's health. And if you just want to take the path of less resistance and do the filling when you know it really shouldn't have just a filling on that tooth, I just don't believe in that. I want to do lifetime dentistry where we can focus on what's going to make you have the least problems, least pain, and least additional expense in the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'm seeing some signs behind you. Grit and success, I can see. What's the one I can see part of?
That one is grind.
Grind, grit, success. What are those to you? Are those the
That's the progression of TMJ.
Yeah, right.
Is that correct? This is a clinical thing.
We believe in it because we want to sell a lot of mouth guards. Absolutely. Yeah.
Are these the values or?
Those are not core values. They're just things that, as I said, I'm a gritty immigrant and I believe in working hard. And I think oftentimes what sets one, and you guys see this all the time, you deal with entrepreneurial dentists and everyone says that they want it, but are they willing to put the work into it to make it work? And I'm going to swear, guys, here, and don't get mad at me, but do you guys know who Ronnie Coleman is? He's a famous bodybuilder, and you can look up this meme online. He won Mr. Olympia, I believe, several times, and he said, everybody want to be a bodybuilder, but ain't nobody want to lift no heavy-ass weights. Yeah. And that's something we talk about as a group of I do a lot of sedation dentistry. I'm doing a lot of fixed arches. I'm doing a lot of what I consider to be cool, life-changing dentistry for folks. And a lot of people say they want to do that, but are they willing to put the work in to make that happen, to reach that success?
That is very true. That's actually a great segue. So let's dive a little bit deeper. What is your biggest accomplishment as you look at all of these iterations, these chapters, as we said, of your journey in dentistry? What has been the thing that stands out amongst everything else?
I like to think that I have achieved a lot more success than I would have imagined even to be possible within dentistry. I remember talking with friends in dental school about what would life look like? What does it look like when all goes well for you? And the way that my life has gone so far is so wildly beyond what I would have considered to be success when I was 24 years old or whatever it is. And I think that it would be insane for me to try to take all the accolade for that. I think that we all are operating not in a vacuum, but there's a component of luck in the people that you are around and all that stuff. But I've been able to surround myself with fantastic people whom I love and who are driven and looking for the same goals as what I'm looking for.
Is there one thing in your tenure as a dentist that you're like, this was a day that I loved? What was that day?
You know what? Not one day, but it doesn't happen too often, but when patients go out of their way to give you a hug or bring you something, knowing that you're actually changing their life as opposed to some transactional, I have a filling, I have a cavity, we're going to get you a filling, and then boom, done. Yesterday, for example, a patient, I just did a filling for her, but somehow I impacted her. She texted me afterwards to thank me that she's got an Airbnb in the Kettle Moraine, and she said, I just want you and your family to go spend there. Let me know when, and I'll block it off for you. Thank you so much for helping me.
Oh, that's really nice.
That is a really fantastic feeling to have, and you can't really quantify that.
So, I think there's always going to be those young dentists that get a chance to stumble on this podcast, watch a clip online. I want you to kind of quantify, what success has looked like for you, again, like how, really for me, it's not even just, hey, listen, I've got, multiple practices today. You've done this twice. Could you just walk through and kind of, this is your brag track, help me understand what you've built in how many years and how that's gone.
It sounds weird, when you put it that way, Michael. So I think if you're asking me for core stats on it, we have 7 dentists, including me. We'll probably collect around $10 million this year between the 4 practices. I can tell you one thing that gives me immense pride, and maybe Laura, this will go to answer your question of one thing that gives me immense pride is I think our lowest paid dentist will probably make about $300,000 this year or something along those lines. Mm-hmm. And afterwards today, it's Friday afternoon. I am going to the brand new house that one of my dentists has just bought. He's 29 and he just bought a $500,000 house, and he's going to pay his debt off soon. I know that a lot of young dentists talk about student debt, and I've had a few dentists pay off their student debt, and that's a real. They say it to be proud about themselves, but when I hear that makes me kind of brag to you guys about it, because I know that they go run some DSO type of grind. That's not happening as quickly for them, and they're not as fulfilled with that. So to answer your question, we got 4 practices that are all doing really well. It's really fun. We got a great group of docs, and we take great care of patients, and all of our docs are aligned in doing comprehensive care for our dentistry. We work really hard to take good care of our teams, to have good, happy, productive teams. But I think at the end of the day, for me, I think I'm probably partially an educator at heart. I enjoy seeing the nervous new grad flowering into such an awesome type of productive, happy, fulfilled, confident dentist and young adult.
Yeah.
Well, we'll have your email in the show notes here, and you'll be accepting resumes indefinitely, I think. So expect the barrage.
Bring it on, baby.
helping people meet their accomplishments and their own goals is and I see that in you too, just knowing you personally, obviously, seeing you be a helper. You're somebody who cares, but you want to teach somebody how to do it, not hand it to them. That makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah. And speaking of these guys like Patrick Lencioni and Simon Sinek, Adam Grant wrote a book, Give and Take. And if anyone's listening to this and hasn't, and especially if they want to or are an entrepreneur of any kind, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice by not listening to it. But you can give everyone some of you, and usually the person who gives more ends up benefiting out of it for potentially even more.
Yep.
Yeah, it's funny you bring up Lencioni. So we're going through a whole internal training with our team right now that's kind of spanning the entire year, and Lencioni's at the core of it. And I just love his pyramid of dysfunction. So I would just second that. If anyone has not, hey, don't even read the book. Go Google them, right? You can get this information in minutes, not hours. And though I think it takes a lifetime to really embrace. In fact, we had a speaker in yesterday, and we were talking about how so many of the lessons that we need to absorb are lessons we know. They're obvious truths, but they're not things that we obviously implement. And that's just like the constant struggle, right? Like at the bottom of that pyramid is trust. And I think we're all like, yeah, we need to build trust with our team. But then you ask yourself, how? If you have a team that you're not completely happy with, and you're like, well, a trust would be helpful here, how? What are you going to do? And that's where it gets a lot harder.
And it's just the constant reminder of the thing that you already know, right? And every single time it nudges you in a different way, and it remotivates you, or it's a new angle or a new problem to solve, to hear the thing that is the block and tackle, that is the basis of the bottom of the pyramid, and to say, am I doing that to the best of my ability so that I can give that to the best of my ability? So that's a good segue into, we've talked about the best days, the best accomplishments. What has been the hardest day? I know there's a million, right? Because we're both entrepreneurs, and you live the best day of your life and the worst day of your life in complete harmony every single day. But what has been your hardest day in dentistry?
Well, it's weird hearing you say that, because from everything I understand, Laura, it's only been good days for you, and you've never really had tough ones. So
I work with my spouse. We all know they're bad days, right?
we always like to say, and I'll bring it back to Coleman. I think that the superpower we have is we know how to take punches, and it's just year after year, chapter after chapter in this business, we have taken body blows, things that, sweep you off your feet when you're literally taking off for the vacation the first one you've taken in 2 years. You're going to spend some time with family over vacation and you get a terrible email. Someone leaves you at the wrong time. Those body blows just build up. And I think being able to get back up, I love, if anyone that's listening, you can't see, but he's got these posters behind him. And for me, grit is just the definition of the path forward.
And speaking of posters, I got another one. I can see it. You guys can't see it, but it's another internet meme. And so take it with a grain of salt, but it's hard times create strong men. Strong men create good times create weak men, and then weak men create hard times. And I am a big fan of that. I actually had Wonderist make the poster for me because I remember it and I put in all the practices, and that's wonderful. Now, after I left Heartland in 2019, when I started Milwaukee Dental Partners, I hadn't had particularly hard times. Everything was going just swimmingly. It was going great, making money, happy doctors, this and that. 2022 hit, and that was, maybe other people had different experiences than I did, but that was a particularly brutal year for us, and it was a really hard year on me personally. There were things that were going on with the business, which, I had, and I got to take the blame here. I soured my relationship with some of my doctors. I had a really good doctor whom I cared about who left because of interpersonal disagreements. And I lost a lot of money. And then when September hit, it was a 3 payroll period. It was a 3 payroll period month. I'm sorry. And things have been going really hard. I was having a tough time to begin with. I get home and I see the email come through and I see the P&L statement. And September of 2022, I lose $250,000. I'm having a tough time already. And I saw it, went to the couch, had a glass of wine, and 20, 30 minutes later, I find myself basically in the fetal position having a full-on breakdown. I don't know if you could call it a panic attack or breakdown, whatever it was ugly. And my wife called my best friend over. He came. I was too ashamed to look him in the eyes. It was a true low point. And you guys talk about Patrick Lencioni, and I've showed that video to my teams dozens of times. I've seen personally that video dozens of times, and the lack of trust and how do we get through that is part of that was vulnerability.
Yep.
And, I'm trying to lead with vulnerability here, but that was just a really hard time in life, and one that I look back and think it was pretty brutal. And I went on antidepressants, which, given that I was this guy talking about hard times create strong men, rah, you need to be tough, right? Can be kind of tough to admit to yourself that you're weak enough that you need help, right? And that's fine. I got through the worst of it. Life is a heck of a lot better right now than it was then. But for all those people who want to build these empires, who are entrepreneurial, you have your highs. Yes, I have months where I make hundreds of thousands of dollars, and that feels pretty darn good. The novelty does fade, but feels pretty darn good. But you can't have these highs without these really low lows, and I'll tell you that was awfully low for me to have. And I didn't think at that point in my life, I thought I was kind of scot-free and didn't have to worry about that kind of stuff happening to me anymore.
So you're at home, your best friend's over. What was the thing, if there was a thing, that you were like, I got to get up, I got to put one foot in front of the other? How did you build back? What was the thing?
It was even worse than that. I was breaking down, and then my wife called Ben over, and then he came, and I was too ashamed to look him in the eye, so I just kept crying, looking at the ground.
How do you get off the couch though? How do you get to the next day?
Grit, right? Grind and grit. You have to. What's the other option? And just give up with millions of dollars of debt? I don't see any other way out of it. It's tough. You got to stop drinking the wine, probably, is a good first step.
Yeah.
Especially if you got work the next day. But what are the other options? The only other option is admitting defeat.
Yeah. I think we always say, because we still have our ongoing challenges, both in our business and in our family. And I, sometimes people will grab us and like, gosh, it's just amazing what you guys do. And I always say, it's amazing what you can do when you don't have a choice. Like that's such a big part of it. And I think that's why grit and getting up and just, it's funny, again, it goes back to that coaching that you're providing these young dentists. You're like, hey, just showing up show up on time. Like if you can do that, you can do anything. And like that, it's almost like that remains the answer for you here. It's like, show up on time tomorrow and let's see what happens again. And next thing you know, it's 2024,
Yeah. And look, I'm not the only one. I understand that. And I've had some of my docs or some of my, other employees where they come upon really bad times and really hard times. And I guess it's good that I had this experience because I can relate to them. And, we all have difficulties. You guys have been open about your difficulties over the last year or two here. But it makes me relatable, I suppose. But beyond that, I feel like I have a real world experience that I can draw from to be able to help people. And like I mentioned before, all the good things, all the bad things that have happened in my life, I'm thankful for them and thankful for that moment because it made me a better, stronger person and man that I am today.
You learn to build the muscle. Like I feel like now everything built in owning a business to this moment with Francie, and then everything from Francie. So I feel like you could hand me anything now and I'm going to be like, well, I got the tools for the toolbox. I may not execute it perfectly, but I feel like I stand in confidence in the fact that I know how I can solve a problem. Now I know how to solve any problem. And if I can't solve it, I know who to go find to help me solve it.
Yep.
And, oh, go ahead.
Yeah, as you say, I think the whole journey for me is you swim in deeper water, you lift heavier things, and you look back and something you never could have done a year ago, 5 years ago. It's hard, but you're doing it. And then you move forward and the same thing happens. And that progression, that for me, that's one of the great joys of business ownership. You continue to surprise yourself. You continue to look back at the mountain you climbed and said that was impossible. And then unfortunately you turn back around and look forward and there's impossible mountains in front of you and the journey goes on. Yeah.
Yeah. You're just stronger for it, right? I mean, but again, like you said, Michael, the only other option is just to break. And it's not an option, quite frankly.
So outside of just showing back up, going in the next day, what were some of the things that you did? I mean, I know you talked about, creating some efficiency. You had 5 practices, you're down to 4 team changes. What were some of the things that you actually did to help adjust? Was it just, hey, keep showing up and this will correct itself? Or did you actually make some changes?
It definitely humbled me a lot. And I think when you come in with a humbled point of view, it changed in a good way my dynamic with the team and the doctors and all that. And you just slowly start digging yourself out of the hole. And we're over 2 years, or we're 2 years into this right now. And I got to say, we're in a pretty good spot, right? It definitely changed how I administratively do things. It allowed me to get back, because I wasn't very much clinical at the time. It allowed me kind of to find my identity back, because like I mentioned earlier, I think at heart, I really am a clinician. And I could never see myself not practicing at all because I feel like I'm pretty good at it. But it gave me my identity and purpose back, which in turn gave me my confidence back, which in turn, as we discussed, allows everything else to kind of sort itself out.
I think one of the things that you're giving us here, and this is, again, it's like one of those lessons that, like, if anyone's tuning in and you want a huge takeaway, going back to that Lencioni's pyramid, trust being at the bottom. It's at the base for a reason, because if you don't have that, nothing else happens. What I'm hearing you say is, 2022, sure, there's, financial or there's global things happening we could talk about. There's all these excuses, but you're kind of saying, hey, listen, there's a team thing happening. There is a trust thing happening. And vulnerability is that thing that pulls trust forward. And it's just, I think that the takeaway that I'm really circling on here is, for anyone that's listening to this and they're like, yeah, I can relate. I can relate to this. Sometimes it feels impossible to know how to fix trust, and vulnerability is just this superpower that if you kind of stop trying to manage it all and you're vulnerable and say, this is just where we're at, yeah, things might change. It might be really unstable for a bit, but you end up really finding your path forward through that.
Yeah, Patrick Lencioni talks about, let them see you sweat, show them your weakness. People know you can't fake your way out of those.
They already know.
You can't fake your way out of, crying on the floor last night. I'm willing to guess that I was not, exuding and an air of confidence.
It was the mascara drips, I think, probably to give it away.
Exactly. Yeah.
Speaking of trust, that's probably a good segue to where we want to spend a little bit of time. Be like, I remember you calling me and being like, hey, I think I'm going to buy this practice. It happens to be in my hometown. And we obviously all grew up nearby each other. And I remember you being really excited about it. And you purchased this practice, and there ends up being a very big breach of trust.
It was so good. One could almost argue that it was too good to be true.
Do you want to tell us the story of Jackson Family Dentistry?
It blows my mind, and I think it is very vulnerable of you to say that your hardest day was on the couch, because I think the story you're about to share, for most people, undoubtedly would be their hardest year, let alone day.
I definitely had cold sweats from this one as well. Yeah,
I've had a few experiences. You've really seen it all, to be honest. I mean, you're like a cat. You've got a lot of chapters in this life.
Couple glasses of wine for this one too, huh?
Yeah,
that is true. Yeah, this one definitely, as opposed to the other story, this one requires some alcohol, perhaps. So I bought Jackson Family Dentistry in Jackson, Wisconsin, January of 2019, and assuming that people don't know Jackson, Wisconsin, which there's no reason to unless you live in the area. It's a town of 6,000 people, about 30 miles outside of Milwaukee. Still a small town. And one of the things I love about being here is, I think that Wisconsin, especially small town Wisconsin, it truly is the stereotype of please and thank you type of people. And Jackson is absolutely no exception to that rule. Love my patients there, and they are just good, loyal, hardworking, thankful people. Bought the practice because, in part, the numbers were so good for it. It was a very profitable practice. Patient flow was good and healthy. Everything about it was good. Really enjoyed getting to chat with the doctor whom I was buying the practice from. We enjoyed each other so much, he even agreed to stay on. And I loved it because he was productive. He could take care of the patients. It freed up my time to do other things, to train up one of my other doctors, for example. And things kind of happened how they did. After roughly 6 months, he left and bought a practice just outside of the restrictive covenant. Fine. I'm doing some chart audits afterwards, and I realize in part why he was doing so many crowns in the practice. Turns out that he would tell a patient, hey, Michael, hey, Laura, you need a crown. You're like, sure thing, Dr. Sharmali. You seem like a really nice guy. You got that aw shucks, small town Wisconsin boy air about you. And so I believe you. So you come in, get the appointment, you get numbed up. And everything's gone according to plan, except for this slight hiccup of he would drill off a chunk of the tooth, take a photo and an x-ray of that tooth then, and submit that to insurance. So even if the tooth didn't need a crown, he would go ahead and make it look like it needed it. And then all of a sudden, insurance was always covering this. I did 10 chart audits and realized that this was the case for 7 out of the 10 patients. Looked at a couple hundred more charts and saw that this was systematically being done. Did a bunch more research, found out this was just being done for a while. And again, we could spend hours talking about this, but he used some Scientology-based consultants who I'm assuming had something to do with this, because as soon as I started using them, this practice became a much more common type of thing. So I called a few lawyers, talked with Michael and Laura, tried figuring out what the heck to do with this, and the first 2 attorneys basically said, don't do anything with it because it's going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's going to drag you through the mud, and it's going to drag the practice through the mud as well. Okay, go to the third attorney, who's a medical legal specialty attorney. He said, unfortunately, Pako, those 3 things that they said are all correct, but it doesn't change that we got to do this. So we went ahead, reported it to the state board, and the Department of Justice and the FBI then investigated this, and after a year, they indicted him. About a year and a half after that, he went to trial. He was found guilty after only about an hour of deliberation by the jury. And so he's been sitting in federal penitentiary for almost 2 years now, and he's got another 2.5 years left. So that's on his end. On my end, though, it's dragged me through the mud. It's cost me several $100,000, and I'm the good guy, and that's the small legal bills that I've had to deal with. And it harmed the practice. When the indictment came out, Jackson Family Dentistry was the top of the 10 o'clock Milwaukee news. I had to deal with, angry patients, understandably so.
It was on Daily Mail. I mean, it was national story. So for anyone
London
listening,
Times maybe even as well.
yeah,
or
I mean,
something
you
like
can
that.
look this up, and there's, so I mean, I love your focus is the local news, and of course that's what the people in the community see. But forever and always, and this is the marketer in me coming out, right? There's this thing called backlinks. We can do our little marketing segment here, right? Backlinks are links from other websites that link back to yours, and most of the time these are things you want. And all of a sudden, if you have hundreds of national news stories about insurance fraud and fraudulent drilling that will never go away, that's coming to your website. That's something you got to be concerned about and you got to work on. Also, maybe don't go shoot a lion in Africa. Either of those things.
Not a great look. Or if you do it on the reserve, right?
Yes, yeah, right.
Yeah. So I mean, it had its effect, and as I've said a couple times here, you try finding the good in these things, and I think it's led to greater trust between my patients and me, because I can look them in the eyes if they're questioning. They say, "Hey, look, Charmaly always told me that I needed crowns," and I tell them they need a crown. Well, how do I know I can trust you? Well, look, here's the deal. I went through hell and over $600,000 of legal bills.
Yeah.
And just to be the good guy in this story, and I'm never going to recoup the investment that I put in on the practice because of this. That's on top of paying way too much for the practice. If you don't trust that, plus this photo of the broken tooth in front of you, I might not be the right guy for you. You need to find someone you can trust. But provided if you can keep all those factors in mind, it's likely that you should be able to trust me here.
Yeah, we should change your tagline, like most trusted dentist in dentistry. I paid $600,000.
Tell me about because I mean, you and I, we obviously were privy to some of this inside conversation because we were working on a strategy for you and how to ensure that we were communicating with patients in a way that they felt that they could still come to Jackson Family Dentistry after. And I remember waking up in the morning and opening the news app and seeing it there on national news and just getting this pit in my stomach, right? And that's me, one momentary who's painfully removed from this, frankly. And I just can't imagine where were you at? Where were you at with your family? Like what was Ben saying? What was Nicole, your wife, saying? Like what were the conversations being had at home?
So the moment that I saw the actual indictment go through, so I started logging into the court system. The moment I actually saw that was I was getting an oil change on my car, actually. And I remember my emotions went from almost a giddiness and excitedness about finally this guy's going to get the justice that I think he deserves and it was December. I remember, even though I was wearing a jacket and I was bundled up, I just got instantly frigid cold. I was shivering like crazy. I don't know if that's the cortisol or it was coursing through my veins or what, but it made it real because and this had been over a year since I had reported into the FBI. So it's all kind of theoretical at this point, aside from the legal bills. Those are very real, but it's all theoretical until, oh shoot, now everybody knows about this. How is this going to impact my life? And that fear of the unknown was pretty tremendous, to be quite honest. That's another formative experience that I will remember, just sitting at the dealership and getting those shivers just instantly hit my body.
It's funny how we always remember those places, and carry that forward. I think one of the other things that I remember at that time, we saw all the stories kind of come out, and there's just that sort of like intense frustration of not being able to control something. and, you know, you see these headlines, you know, dentist, Wisconsin dentist does this, and then like your headshots there, right? And it's like, and you know, not maliciously, but for people that skim, which we all do, you could easily have gone through that and been like, this is the guy, you know, this is the guy. You know, what other things like that happen? Even like Google reviews. I mean, what other impact did you have to navigate? Patients calling you, people maybe misassigning the blame, not understanding the full story. How did that go?
Yeah, there's plenty of misassigned blame. You know, I remember when the news crew came to the office, we politely asked them to leave the practice, and, you know, then they went across the street. And, you know, Jackson is a small town, the coffee shop, Coffeeville is the name. They were in front of Coffeeville shooting some, you know, shots of the practice and the sign and all this stuff. And I remember walking up to the reporter and said, you know, guys, like, I understand this is the practice where these things happen, but his practice is just 11 miles down the road west here. And she looked at me and said, oh, I know, but this is what we're putting on the news tonight. So to your point, Michael, I can't control that narrative, right? I also can't control rumors on Facebook of people saying, yeah, they're still doing this at the office or whatever it is. What I can tell you is, though, generally speaking, cooler heads prevail. I personally spoke with hundreds of patients about this, and I sat down, and not just I, but other people in the practice spent many hours. We would just dedicate an hour or two after hours closed. And I'm super appreciative for all of my employees who decided to stay around for this. We went through their photos and showed them, yes, you were part of this fraud scheme. No, you were not part of this fraud scheme, or whatever it is. And, you know, going back to the personal toll, I won't say the family's name, obviously, but, you know, one family that had been coming to practice for many years sat down with mom and dad because they had dual insurance. So this is shooting fish in a barrel for the guy, because it was all insurance money, no out of pocket. So it's easier to convince the patient to say yes to the treatment. And we're showing them, yep, mom, you have these 3-4 teeth that didn't need to be worked on, or dad, you have these 3-4 teeth. But let me show you something else. Your 14-year-old boy, he had no cavities. He had enormous fillings placed on there that broke down, and by the time the boy was 17, he needed crowns. And it made it even more real to me when I see mom break down, start crying in the operatory, and then see dad get angry and start, you know, clenching his fist and stomping his feet. What am I supposed to do or say in that moment? Right? And that's tough. And thankfully, the dad came to the sentencing hearing. I saw him there, and I got to chat with him, and I still have a great relationship with the family. But those are the hard moments. Or someone who nannied his children, you know, having this work done, or former employees of his who had this work done. Those are hard things. And, you know, we talk about the human connection in dentistry, and it doesn't get much more human connection than something like that.
Yeah, I mean, you had classmates.
Yeah, I'm from Germantown. Jackson
Is
feeds
it a
into the
suburb
Germantown
of Germantown,
School
would you
District.
say, Laura?
What's that?
Is it a suburb of Germantown?
It's a suburb of Germantown. And so many of Dr. Major's patients are people that I have known my whole life and have grown up with and have been affected by this. And just to give you, the headshot that Michael was talking about, Michael took that headshot. I am the person on the cover of the direct mail, or at least used to be. And so it lets you know, as big as dentistry is, it's still so tiny. It's such a cottage industry, and so many people are affected in ways big or small. And so it's just a very interesting story. Someone goes into dentistry with excitement and energy and entrepreneurial spirit, and then they get handed something like this that they ethically feel they have to stand up for, right? You ethically felt the call to have to do this. It's part of the oath that you take. And then to have to deal with all of the repercussions that come along with it that have truly nothing to do with you. It's just such a mountain to have to climb and navigate and work your way through, that is not the thing you imagine you will ever have to deal with when you are graduating from dental school or decide to start this journey.
Yeah, they don't teach you about, being interviewed by federal prosecutors in dental school. for
Yeah.
example.
Just want to.
That should probably be an elective course at least. Also would be a great elective course to have some business courses
Right.
in dental school as well. Maybe right after the interview with the FBI training.
One day I think I'm going to teach some classes at the dental school, and I do. I volunteer time with the business club at the local dental school, and it's really great because only the people who want to actually learn show up, and it's really great. But I'm going to change subjects a little bit here, but I really think that if I were to teach a business class on dental school, I would just teach them how to do a patient presentation, how to do the most effective 5 minutes when you're meeting a new patient. How do you build rapport and get a proper transfer from your clinical team member? And I'm going into my systems mode here, guys, but you'll have to bear with me. But how do you do a proper transfer while building rapport with your patient? How do you present treatment to make the patient understand quickly and succinctly what happens when they don't do the treatment, right? What's the consequence? Not what happens like the cavity gets deeper. We have a carious pulpal exposure. We have a sub-G fracture, right? Like if you're catching yourself saying sub-G craze line to a patient, you've lost. You're done. You're not making any sense, right? But it's going to cause you pain, and it's going to cost you an additional $1,000 for that root canal on top of just a crown. And it's not a matter of if, but when it hurts. I like you, but I'm not coming here Friday evening to take care of this toothache for you. That's why you have to let me place a crown on this tooth. And then how do we, that's a very powerful thing. And as simple as that was, it can take months or years for dentists to be able to say it that simply oftentimes. Beyond that, in the patient exam, how do we get I'm gonna sound crass here, things it's very salesy. How do we get a closing statement? How do we get the patient to confirm? We can call it a confirmation statement if we want to, right? How do we get them to close it? And then how do we transfer it back to the team member? Because again, it doesn't matter how good you are at doing something if you can't get the patient to say yes in the first place.
Sure.
One of the things that our COO, Matt, on our team always says, he says, if I had more time, I would have written you a shorter email. And I always love that because it's just like, we tend to say, if I say more and more and more, I'll convince you. And I think we often experience when we're on the other side of it, like, just break it down for me. Just cut.
Say it simply.
Yeah. Cut to the end. Tell me what I need to know. So,
and it's truly elegant, isn't it, to be able to say a complicated message in a simple manner,
yes,
quickly and understand.
Powerful. Yeah. Well, before we wrap it up, we want to ask you one more question. We've gotten a little uncomfortable. We've built some vulnerability here in the last hour, and we want to give you a platform to share your next big goal. So, what's the big uncomfortable goal that you're working on, that you're thinking about, that you have an aspiration to complete now in 5 years and 10 years? What's on your mind? Where are you going from here?
I'll tell you what. Practice-wise, I like stability, and I think I've had very much excitement in the last few years. I long for a little bit of boring time, so that's really fantastic. Another short-term goal of mine, and it happens to be just 3 weeks away, is I hope to survive and slog my way through an Ironman.
Oh, interesting.
So remind me, what do you all go through with an Ironman? What are the gates?
It's stupid. There's no rational reason for human being to do it other than to check a box or for ego, I suppose. But it's a 4 kilometer or 2.4 mile swim, followed by a 112 mile bike ride, followed by a marathon. So 26 miles.
So which one are you most excited about, and where is this?
So this will be in Madison. The backstory is I was 25 when my wife and I started going out. So I was in dental school, and I did a half Ironman. And I always said that the year that I turn 40, I'm going to do or attempt to do an Ironman. And my wife didn't forget about that. So for a combined Christmas birthday gift, she signed me up for the Ironman.
Nice.
Oh.
And I said, babe, this is great, but I'm just at a busy point in my life. I don't know. So she said, shut up. You're doing this. And I said, well, look, the other problem is we have 3 kids, and this is going to be a very intense time commitment for me. So you have to right now commit to not complaining that I don't come home till 9 p.m. at night because I have to go to the gym after work. And to her credit, she has been amazing about this. And I've been able to spend a lot of time training for it. So to answer your question, Laura, this swim is scary because I'm just not a good swimmer. I didn't know how to do a front crawl until a few months ago. So I didn't even know.
Oh, wow.
So
Wow.
just spent enough time in the pool that I kind of figured it out, I suppose. I'm also not a runner, and I've never done a marathon before. And I've certainly never done a marathon after swimming 2.5 miles and biking up 112 miles. Done the bike ride, excited for that. If I can finish in the 16 or 17 hour time limit, that will be a humongously successful day for me. And that'll be a great, great, great box that I can check and never have to check again.
Yes,
That's
I like
amazing.
the last part. Never have to check again. Well, I am eternally grateful that I did not foolishly say something at the beginning of my relationship to Laura about running marathons or any of that. So I don't have to anticipate that as a future gift for myself, but I'm incredibly impressed that that is something that you're chasing and tackling.
When you met your wife when you were 25, I was there the night. I wasn't with you when you met her, but she came home after being at that. Was it a supply packing event for Honduras?
Yeah, it was for the med packing for the mission trip we went on.
I was at the house and she came home and she's like, I met this guy. He's so tall and a little weird.
Awkward. Yeah. So,
But I am forever grateful for that because it has changed the trajectory of our life. So thank you so much for your time today. It feels so poignant to have you here as our first guest and as the longest standing enthusiast of Wonderist. Your dedication to us and your belief in us has been a tremendous blessing. And same with Nicole. So trying not to get choked up here, but thank you.
it's a real honor. And, to what we've been talking about, the human connection with things, it's been just such a lovely thing to be able to work with you, someone I love, and get to know Michael through the process, obviously, thankfully, and seeing what you guys are doing here is really awesome. I really love seeing it. And every time I talk with either of you guys, I can just hear this excitement of like, oh my God, you wouldn't believe what we're doing next. You wouldn't believe this. This is going to be so awesome. And I think that enthusiasm is something that I try channeling in myself because it's easy to get beaten down by life. It's easy to become cynical. It's easy to become sarcastic about things, but your guys is just optimism and excitement is truly inspirational and infectious. So thank you guys very much. And this is fantastic and really excited and really thankful to be friends with you guys.
Thank you for saying that. No pressure. You are the first episode here. So if the podcast fails, it will largely sit on your
shoulders. It only gets better from here, right? You're going to have interesting guests at one point as well.
I cannot imagine this will be the last time that we have you on the podcast. We're going to have to follow up on this goal, hear how the Ironman goes. But yeah, thank you again. This has just been an awesome first conversation, and we're so appreciative. You're our first client. You're our first podcast guest. We can't think of a better way to do it.
Yeah. So thank you, Dr. Paco Major, for joining us on our first episode of the Wonderful Dentist podcast, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Thanks for having me, guys.
The Wonderful Dentist podcast is hosted by Laura Maly and Michael Anderson. Produced by Chris Dumas. If you have a question for the podcast, email us at podcast@wonderistagency.com. Until next time, keep it wonderful.